Hey guys, it is Tyler here, back once again with another episode of Assassin's Creed The Truth. And I wanted to do, actually a video I've wanted to do for quite a while on the channel and talk about a lot of Assassin's Creed things all in one video. You know how much I love to put theories together, that's what this series is based off. And this video, I'm gonna go through the mysteries and unanswered questions that are still around in Assassin's Creed today. Now, mysteries used to be done on purpose, or at least in the sense that it would be to set up something huge that would then be paid off later in the future. Now, with so much content that has been created in Assassin's Creed over the years, with main titles, comic books, side games, all this sort of stuff, it creates a lot of confusing details and plot devices that are never really paid off or used properly, or that were written because they thought they were going to be used later on in another game or a side game, and then they weren't. So there's so much stuff that's just all over the place, really, and it causes a lot of things to be just lost in the shuffle of things and never really be answered, while also giving us a chance to see and build some things that maybe aren't as built as well as they once were in past games when it wasn't quite as frequent as it has been in the last few years. However, there's definitely mysteries that are still out there that have me suspenseful, and I'm interested to see how they're paid off, and hopefully they're paid off and live up to some sort of expectations. Now, in this video, I'm going to go through things that I'll never do its own video on because they're small things, because I can put these mysteries and unanswered questions into a couple categories. One is mysteries that you can kind of chalk up to bad writing, or they're things that at least just won't be addressed. Some of it was simply just to fuck with us, and some of it was just to be a little plot device that was kind of meaningless, but to us as fans we're like, hang on, that's interesting, why isn't that a thing? Then there's the second category of mysteries that didn't have a long-term plan. They were put in place, they are trying to pay them off, but there's clearly no plan to it. They're just kind of figuring it out on the spot and changing things as they go. The box. And you can also put a third category of mysteries that we've been waiting for, they're building to, they're still ongoing, they're still interesting. So I'm going to talk about all three of those categories. The first one were things you can that won't be addressed, or you can chalk up to bad writing, other things I won't make videos on. And I'm going to talk about some theories for those things in this video. Whereas the other two categories are things that I want to address in this video, to talk about, to bring up to you guys for discussion, but they will almost definitely, if they haven't already, get their own separate video in Assassin's Creed The Truth, and I'll put my own theories together for those. Plus there's a couple other crazy ones I've been working on that'll come out down the line, so don't you worry about that. So without further ado, let's get in to some of these theories. So when you're talking about theories that you can kind of chalk up to bad writing, this isn't one of them. This is one that has writer Darby McDevitt trying to fuck with us. And this is, who was the guy on the bench next to Ezio when he died in Florence? Now this is an Assassin's Creed short film, Assassin's Creed Embers, set after the events of the Ezio trilogy, where you see Ezio train young assassin Xiao Yun and also meet his end, what looks to be old age, but there's this weird guy on the bench and you're just like, who the fuck is this dude? He just seems like a brash young asshole. Everything Ezio wasn't, kind of the opposite. Like, he wasn't just young and brash, which Ezio sure was in his time, but he was a real dick. Like, talking shit about Florence and saying he wished he was in Rome and all this sort of nonsense, and then Ezio's just really coughing and stuff and he ends up dying, but this guy acts all weird and says some shit to him. And people are like, wait, did that person kill him and poison him or something? Was he just a random dude that just happened to be there for discussion? Did he just represent everything Ezio wasn't? Was he someone Ezio could have became if it wasn't for the assassins? Was it death himself? You know, was it a metaphor? Like, you just don't know. And we asked all these questions to the guy who wrote it, Mr. Darby McDevitt, and he just goes, never going to answer it. Do I think he has his own idea? Definitely. Do I think he's ever going to tell us? No, because he loves to fuck with us, so thanks for that, Darby. Now, there is one that, I don't call it bad writing, but it's something that just won't be addressed in the future of the franchise. At least, that's what I believe, and that is when Arno went back at the end of Assassin's Creed Unity to find Germain's body with Napoleon Bonaparte. and it's just not really addressed. You kill German, and then you come back during the credits, and you're like, wait, why has Arno come back years later to this skeleton of German? And you kind of realize that if you look into history, it was actually because Napoleon was going to demolish the temple, the Templars' temple, in 1804. So I believe that Arno and Napoleon went down there to move Germain's body, and they put his skull in this like skull wall in the catacombs. So I'm not sure if they wanted to hide his body, keep it preserved. I don't know how much they knew, whether he was a sage or any of that stuff. I don't believe they would have known how important the blood of and DNA of Germain was. But it's just kind of bizarre that he's even moved or anything. Maybe for Templar worship purposes, they just kind of hid his body away or something like that. They didn't want to have any Templar remains associated as a burial site for the temple. Maybe it was a political move. I just don't know why, and I don't think it's ever really going to be addressed. It's just kind of something that they put in. Maybe they wanted to address it, but it just never came about a purpose for it. Another one in Unity that kind of annoys the shit out of me, because this is what I chalk up to just plain old bad writing. And that is the symbols on the walls at the Bastille at the start of Unity when you meet Belek. Now, Belek says he got himself thrown into half the prisons of Paris to find these symbols, and that's how Belek realizes Arno's special and has, high concentration of first Civ's DNA and can use eagle vision and all that nonsense. So he's like, oh wow, you can see it? You can actually see it? That's cool. But then they're like, okay, let's train and find a way out of here. But like, I thought you got yourself thrown in. What did you need the symbols for? So it just made me curious, because I'm like, why were they there? Who put them there? Why were they important? So I started doing some digging, putting some theories together, because they're the same symbols that sages see. Now, we know Germain was a sage. He wasn't in that prison. And he saw similar symbols when he had his visions that you see later in the game when you see the flashbacks. Now, we know another sage in France was Jacques de Molay, who was a sage that was the final Grand Master of the Templar Order in real life, and the last Grand Master of the Templar Order before the temple was eradicated publicly and before they went underground in the Assassin's Creed world. And you see that at the start of Assassin's Creed Unity. You see Jacques de Molay burned at the stake, but he actually spent 7 years in prison. So I started to think to myself, oh shit, what prison was he in? Was he in the Bastille? Did he put those symbols on the walls? What do they mean exactly? Perhaps there's more to it than we first thought. Well, in fact, no. The Bastille wasn't built or even started construction until over 50 years after Jacques de Molay's death. So to me, it just means symbols are meaningless bad writing. There was some tweets out there, and I believe Gabe Graziani did reply to Cole, one of the community members out there, and said the writer put it into words like, no, it was some assassins in the Middle Ages or something like that, and it was just kind of not really important. The writer obviously had his own idea of who put it there, but it obviously wasn't that important to address further. If someone knows more about it, perhaps let me know, but from what I've done with my digging, it's kind of a meaningless, bad writing sense that we put this cool, interesting thing there to push the plot forward in another way, while fans are sitting there like, but what does that mean? Don't move forward, what does that mean? Whereas for them, oh, that was just a plot device, it doesn't actually mean anything. Well, okay, let's maybe do better, guys. Let's maybe do a bit better than that next time. Another one that obviously won't be addressed and is kind of maybe just grasping for straws here is the secret door. I did a separate video on it, and perhaps it was the doorway leading in to where the Shroud of Eden was hidden underneath the Monteriggioni. You see it in Assassin's Creed Brotherhood's modern day, where Desmond's like, you think this door would lead somewhere? And Lucy goes, but it doesn't. It said really weird, like the door's important, and then they move on. Perhaps it was just random dialogue there to tell you the door's the wrong way, doesn't lead anywhere, the other way is this way, that's the place you're supposed to go. Maybe it was just helping direct you through the mission. But there's definitely some secretive shit down in that Auditory family crypt, so I wouldn't be surprised if the door did mean something, but again, I don't think it'll ever be addressed, nor do I think we'll ever know what it really meant, if anything at all. Another thing that's brought up during Assassin's Creed Syndicate, actually, is the fact that after the events of Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, Edward Kenway did a lot of travelling around the world and had a lot of information on Pieces of Eden, particularly the Shroud. That's partly how Evie, Henry Green, Jacob go on and find the Shroud and all that stuff. So perhaps Edward did a lot of discoveries similar to Ezio and Altair did in their time. And for me, I want to know, well, what did Edward do? Edward's one of my favourite characters of the franchise. He's such an amazing guy to see his rise and how he was a bit of a douchebag and he kind of became a mature, good guy assassin. Now, what did he do after that? What did he accomplish in that role? We don't really see. We see his pirate life, then we see the end of his life in Assassin's Creed Forsaken novel. I want to know, what did he discover, if anything? What was he looking for exactly? Why did he do all this journeying? I know there's some information out there, but there's a whole game there. But it's just a game or a book or something that I don't think we're ever going to see. So I just think it's interesting writing and a question that we'll never see properly addressed. Some other unanswered questions that come from Unity, a lot in Unity, I think that tells you something about the poor writing going on here, was at the end of Dead Kings, the assassin you hand this Apple of Eden to has the Sage Eyes. And they're just being like, oh shit, another sage, you just gave the apple to a sage, oh what does that mean, OMG, like oh my god. It's just another thing that, is it important? Probably not. It's just kind of a little teaser to nothing, but it's just something interesting you throw in there and we get no information on, you don't address. Not a bad writing thing, just kind of a little tease, a cool one too, but was it necessary? Oh, look, why not? I guess at the end of the day, why not throw some cool shit in there? Also in Unity, you're talking about Shay Cormac. Shay, the main character and protagonist of Assassin's Creed Rogue, killed Arno's father. Now, you'd think Shay would then be a major target for Arno. What a great storyline to actually have a protagonist face another protagonist, and one that there's a reason and intention to have conflict there, but they didn't address it, and you never really find out if Arno ever knew about Shay and what happened, and this assassin hunter and Templar that is Shay, and it would have been such an interesting dynamic and storyline to happen in perhaps an Arno sequel, but an Arno sequel is something we're just probably never going to see, which is unfortunate in a lot of ways because that was some major plot points and they could have done a lot with Arno. They really, they really missed a lot of cool story with Arno, both in Unity and potentials for follow-ups, especially with that whole Shay storyline, and it's something I just don't think we're going to see addressed. Of course, there's plenty of questions out there in the Assassin's Creed world that individual people have. Those are my major ones that I don't think we'll ever see addressed again. Now I still want to talk about briefly, and this will give you a teaser for future Theory Videos episodes about things I want to talk about and address later on, but there's still questions out there that I'm interested in. One category I talked about, which was something that there is a long-term, not vision for, but there's a long-term story there. And they haven't really thought it through and it's kind of been making up on the spot. The one that goes to mind straight away is the box. I focus on the box a lot. It's something that seems to have changed what it was supposed to be originally. Like, the questions I've still got there are things like, how did Ezio get the box in the first place? How did he come into contact with that? We were with him for so long, and then he has this mysterious device that reads First Civilization manuscripts. What else does it do? We know the Koh-i-Noor's involved, that diamond that has fucking energy powers. Like, there's all these different things they've added to it and chopped and changed, and all of a sudden it's a wooden piece of shit that does a million things. Like, it doesn't make sense by design what it is. Who built it? Was it the first civs? Was it some very intelligent people using pieces of Eden like the Egyptians, and they used it to get architecture plans? They built the pyramids. Like, I've got those theories there. You can watch my latest precursor box video, what I think it'll do in Empire. But the point is, it's something that has been chopped and changed clearly through time. Will Darby McDevitt put it to where he wanted it originally in Empire, which we think he's writing? Hopefully he's writing. Fingers crossed there, Darby. We really wish you would. And he wrote the box in Assassin's Creed Embers, so hopefully he'll have a role to play with revealing maybe what the box's point is. I certainly hope so. Now, mysteries that are still going on that I'm suspensefully waiting for answers for, to a certain level, or at least they're not poorly put together. They're interesting storylines that need to have a payoff at a certain point soon, and also there's potential to create a lot of cool stuff in the future. At the moment, there's not much there. There's a lot of years of development, but not a lot of intrigue. I'm talking about Juno. Obviously, she's a great character, a great villain. She's a very interesting character in a lot of ways, but you really have to look deep to understand it, and there's a lot you can miss if you're just playing the games and looking at it at face value, not paying the deep attention to it, which is a problem. It shouldn't have to be that hard to be that interested in it, but they haven't done a great job of writing her storyline. What's she planning exactly? Is she trying to move everyone into the grey with her? Has she realised she can't get physical form? Is she trying to then get power through means of doing what Consus wanted to do ultimately, what she tried to do with Aita? Put everyone's consciousness inside the grey, inside the internet, inside whatever. Is that her plan? To rule some sort of virtual world and make it all some sort of projection? Or is she trying to get the physical form back? Is she going to use Abstergo's Project Phoenix against them? Like, perhaps she will, who knows? That's the questions I would like to see answered, but they need to do a lot of work developing it better and just doing more face value forward stuff in our faces to show us this is important, pay more attention, this isn't something you're going to see 10 seconds of each game. They need to do more. Obviously, what Abstergo's planning, they've always looked for pieces of Eden, they've always wanted to have control, but now they no longer need to do that primitive look for pieces of Eden. It looks like they're trying to create pieces of Eden with Project Phoenix, so there's different ways they're going to do that with Sages. That's a whole nother video in itself. There's things like Who is Eve? That's a really long ongoing storyline. I've done videos on that in the past as well in Assassin's Creed The Truth. I believe it was episode 2. I talked about Eve and my theories on that, so you can go back and watch that if you'd like. There's plenty more I think we'll get to see from Eve in the future, so that's something that's been under the radar and very well done and very interesting, because it hasn't been something that's like in our faces, like here you go, this is an important storyline like Juno, but been poorly done. It's been something that's started under the radar and that's remained under the radar, but potentially could come out of nowhere and be like, fuck you, I'm huge, I'm a big plot point, holy shit. Hopefully that's the case. I'd like to see that become more prominent in the future. Obviously in Syndicate, Desmond's son was introduced, or at least someone of close blood relation to Desmond. Hopefully his son, very interesting storyline that way. A lot of plot creation can be done, especially since he's a sage. It fits into Juno's plan, it fits into Abstergo's plan. It creates a character we then care about, a protagonist we play as, a role we have in this world that then connects to these two major ongoing storylines that you can then reveal the Eve stuff alongside it. It literally creates all the modern day stuff, puts it into one guy's story, and makes it a thing we get to experience. That's what they need to do. I've talked about Desmond's son a million times before. It's something I would love to see done properly, and I look forward to seeing that storyline not just be an Easter egg, but be something important that is introduced in the next installment of Assassin's Creed. Another little thing I wanted to talk about was Subject 16's truth files. I do think they're going to be addressed, because back in Brotherhood, he says a lot of crazy stuff. That's where the Eve stuff comes from. Some of the Desmond son stuff comes from, as well as perhaps Juno's plans, all this crazy stuff. There's a lot said in that truth file. Again, I've talked about that a lot on Truth. I've talked about that a lot on Kill Connor Club. It's something I'd like to see addressed in the future, and I do think there is some sort of plan for. I don't know if they knew when they wanted to do it, but I think they have an idea of what it all means. So guys, that was a lot of content to get through in one go, but there we have it. That's this episode of Assassin's Creed The Truth. Those are the major unanswered questions and mysteries in Assassin's Creed that I still have. I'm sure there's plenty out there that you guys have. I'd like to hear them in the comment section down below. As well as let me know what you think of what I've addressed. Obviously these major big ones, I'm going to do videos on the ones I haven't addressed already in the future, like Juno's planning, Abstergo's planning, how that can be affected, what can be created from that. I've already done Eve ones, I've done Desmond's son ones, I've done ones on Ezio's box. Plus, obviously I addressed all those mysteries that'll probably never be answered, unfortunately, but they're ones that I'd like to talk about, give you some insight on, and even just address to you and be like, look guys, don't have your hopes up too high that they'll be addressed, but you know what? Crazier things have happened, so you just never know in this crazy, crazy world we live in. Anyway guys, thank you for watching this episode of Assassin's Creed The Truth. I will be back very soon with more crazy insanity theories. Hope you will enjoy it, and I will see you guys later.